Now let's talk about freeing yourself of the burden of being original. Tanner Christensen, who's an expert on creativity, asks a profound question in a YouTube video. If you share an idea you think of as creative to one person and they respond with, "I already thought of that," is the idea any less creative? Some people think that for an idea to be truly creative, it must be original. In his book, Steal Like an Artist, Austin Kleon says that if you ask an artist to honestly admit where he or she gets creative ideas, they steal them because nothing is truly original. If an artist really believes they have created an original, never seen before work, they just don't know the reference. Even the Bible in Ecclesiastes says there is nothing new under the sun. Now, sometimes this stealing idea is more blatant than other times. Johnny Cash wrote Folsom Prison Blues, and it turns out that he cribbed it from Gordon Jenkins' Crescent City Blues, which includes the opening line, "I hear the train a-comin', it's rollin' round the bend." Studying and copying the works of other artists is part of the training of any painter. Even Vincent van Gogh, throughout his career, continued this practice inspired by the artworks of his predecessors and contemporaries from many different regions and artistic movements. So given his location in the countryside, Van Gogh sought the people and landscapes around him. One of his great models was the realistic painter Jean-François Millet. And in September of 1889, he began to make paintings based on the wood engravings by Millet, showing farmers at work. And he produced 21 works that were inspired by the works that Millet had created. Shakespeare's Othello was heavily inspired by Giovanni Cinthio. In fact, many of Shakespeare's plays drew heavily on manuscripts by other authors. But I think everyone would agree that Shakespeare improved upon the ideas and made them his own with his own flair for elevated language. Plagiarism is stealing the exact words of another without citation indicating the source. It's always wrong. Plagiarism of ideas is also wrong, but there are countless examples of movies, books, and inventions that seem to emerge almost simultaneously from more than one source. It seems that sometimes there is something in the universal consciousness where two or more people have the same idea independently. For example, Isaac Newton and Gottfried Leibniz independently invented calculus. There are so many twin film occurrences where the same basic storyline of two completely different film companies produce essentially the same film, and they are listed here. Cryptomnesia is a syndrome where you mistakenly think an idea is your own original idea, but it came from somewhere in your memory. This actually happened to Helen Keller, who wrote a book called The Frost King, after many years earlier reading a similar book. And it was only after a court battle that she recalled the earlier book. Thanks to Google, it is so much easier these days to do your homework regarding ideas. When you come up with an idea, Google it, and if someone else has published it, even if you came up with it on your own, just cite his or her work in what you write. It's not that hard. It's gracious, and no one cares that someone had an idea before you. Just because someone somewhere else had an idea or the same exact idea doesn't mean that your idea is any less creative or has any less merit. And yet so many people back away from sharing ideas or bringing them to the light of day because it's already been done before. But my point of view is an idea already thought of by someone else can still be creative. You can add your unique take to each idea. You have your own original perspective, context, and culture to draw on. Just add your own take, your own originality to any idea. Play with it. Find the thing that makes it yours. Evolve it. Push it forward. Mind map it. Daydream it. Sleep on it. Do some automatic writing on it. Through my business career in fashion retailing, I realized that there really aren't many new ideas. One merchant might knock off something from a runway show, but the first designer for the runway show got their own inspiration from somewhere before them. Creative people are always looking for inspiration. So Austin Kleon's and Tanner Christensen's point is that we should all free ourselves from the burden of trying to be completely original because we can't. We are all the sum of our influences. The German writer Goethe said, "We are shaped and fashioned by what we love." Now, let's take this idea a step further. I think highly creative people are good collectors. So now let's talk about how to collect selectively to enhance your creativity. In the retail business, I was part of the designers would travel the world and spend hours in vintage stores looking at history. In addition to looking at historical clothing, they use films, music, fabric swatches, wallpaper patterns, colors, books, paintings, photos, architecture, the world around them for inspiration. As a practicing artist myself, there are certain artists I love. I study everything I can to know that artist better. For example, one of the artists I have a lot of reverence for is Vasily Kandinsky. I Google things about him all the time. I paint paintings inspired by his style. I read books he read. I look at the bibliography of those books for even more inspiration. I like to think that I am part of Kandinsky's creative lineage. I have pictures of him, along with his self-portrait. This is his self-portrait, among other artists I admire in my art studio. Of course, I have him here in my art journal. Kandinsky was not only a painter, he was a writer. And he wrote a book that has been a major influence on me titled Concerning the Spiritual in Art. This book explains Kandinsky's own theory of painting and crystallizing the ideas that were influencing many other modern artists of that period. Along with his own groundbreaking paintings, this book had a tremendous impact on the development of modern art. I read what he wrote. I know who influenced him. I know who he admired. A book like this is a treasure, not only because of what's written in the book itself, but also because of the bibliography, because that gives me a roadmap into his influences. I also have some treasured archetypes, from sacred feminine icons to Egyptian Neteru from my mythology studies, and these archetypes contain a creative energy that I try to emulate and tap into. I keep references to them, and I pay homage to them in my art journal as well. I also have a special reverence for Leonardo da Vinci. He is all over my art journals. Thinking about Leonardo always gives me inspiration on creative ideas. So who are your inspirational archetypes? Maybe you had a beloved mentor or other benefactor, someone who came before you and paved the way. Perhaps as you are creatively problem solving, you imagine how they would approach this problem. Austin Kleon talks about his inspirational archetypes. He says they are friendly ghosts. I can almost feel them pushing me forward as I'm hunched over my desk. The great thing about dead or remote masters is that they can't refuse you as an apprentice. You can learn whatever you want from them. They left their lesson plans in their work. In this course, I also talk about finding a way to save your creative influences and inspirations, which dovetails nicely with this lesson. Once again, let me make the point, I'm not talking about plagiarism. That is trying to pass off someone else's work as your own. When you copy the work of a master, you're trying to get inside their head. You are figuring out, how did they do that? You are reverse engineering. You are practicing problem solving. It is delightful to realize the many ways you can approach making something. It's all problem solving, and problem solving enhances even more creativity. We learn to read and write by copying the alphabet. Musicians practice scales. The Beatles started as a cover band. Salvador Dali said, "Those who do not want to imitate anything produce nothing." There isn't anything wrong with using work as heavy inspiration so long as you cite your references and add value. Think of Shakespeare's works, which used plot lines of other writers, but his beautifully written lines elevate the original stories to treasures that have stood the test of time. Using other people's work as a base builds on the foundation of others. Focus on adding significant value that improves upon the original. This is how modern civilization was built. Focus on what you can authentically add to it. Instead of being intimidated by all the work that has come before, let it inspire you. Give credit to your inspirational archetypes and make them proud that they provided your foundations. Your assignment for this lesson is to include your inspirational archetypes in your art journal and then keep adding to your pages as you learn more about your inspirational archetype.